I hope everyone is well. Today we're going to look at what it takes to start drafting a brand new article and where you might go about doing that, i.e. in your user space. So this is quite a lot, I suppose, maybe to pack in to a half an hour, so we'll see how far we get. I'm going to say first off, if you are a brand new editor, um, I would highly recommend editing existing articles before you think about creating one. I know the impetus for an awful lot of people to start editing Wikipedia is finding that notorious red link and desperately wanting to turn it blue. But it is quite a high bar to set yourself, especially when you're learning the ropes of editing Wikipedia, and it can be quite disappointing if you've put in a lot of work and perhaps just make a few errors that all new editors make, and it means that your beloved draft doesn't get published, and it's quite disheartening as a new editor. So I would really strongly recommend finding some of those stubs that we've talked about in the last few sessions, articles that have those maintenance tags that need good citations, that rely too much on original research. And what you'll find is if you get yourself, I don't know, a book on early Irish painters or something like that, you'll find that you'll have a cluster of articles that you can perhaps improve from one resource. Or perhaps one, the Irish Museum of Modern Art website has very good little potted biographies, and you can find yourself maybe using that as a citation in several different articles and plumping them out a little bit that way, or perhaps removing some of those citation needed markers and things like that. But if I can't dissuade you, and you really, really want to create that brand new article, I'm going to show you what it's like to navigate that. So one of the things that I'd say, and one of the discussing this on Twitter with fellow Wikimedians over today, one of the, aside from making sure that a new article looks and feels like a Wikipedia article should, one of the things that is a major downfall for a brand new article is that it lacks those interwiki links. Remember when I was talking about how articles can be orphans? If no other page points to an article, it's referred to as an orphan. And it's a bit of a red flag that perhaps the subject is not notable enough because no other article on Wikipedia is pointing towards it as needing to create an article there. One of the first things that you could do is go around to articles that are relevant to the subject that you're writing about and add those red links before you even create the article. And a lot of editors will often do that as they're writing articles, or as they notice perhaps the same person or the same subject or the same place is mentioned in several articles, might add a few red links and say, okay, now it's time to create an article on this historic house or this particular period of time in a place, this historic battle, or this person. So what I've noticed is that there is a bit of a gap in early Irish badminton players. And I'm going to put it out there now, I have played badminton very briefly in my youth. I was terrible at it. I have absolutely zero interest in badminton. I don't know if I've ever watched a badminton match. But even I, as a mere passerby, will probably acknowledge that if people are winning tournaments, have won historical tournaments, it probably means that they're important enough to have a Wikipedia article. In researching this, I've discovered that there are scant resources at the moment on the very early players. We're talking, so the very first Irish Open and the English Open, Scottish, was turn of the century, early 1900s. And most of these people, if you look, so this is the article on the Irish Open, and you'll notice an awful lot of people are what we're referring to as red links, and an awful lot of them are only known by their initials. They're not even known by their full names. And a little bit of work that I've been doing kind of here and there is trying to see if I can kind of scurry around and find little bits and pieces of information about them. It's proving quite challenging, to be honest. I have learned a few things, like T.D. Good here. He's a doctor, and I think he's Terence something. There's a whole family of Goods who play himself and his wife. R.H. Blues comes up to an awful lot. But so in this, you can see that we're getting the same few names repeated over and over again. So if we were to create, this is kind of demarking to other Wikipedia editors that these people were championship players, they're historically important, we should probably have an article about them. Now, they're probably going to be very short articles because, as I said, the sources are so scant. And what I've discovered is an awful lot of these people have articles on other language Wikipedias, in particular German. The German Wikipedia has very good coverage of badminton players. I didn't know the Germans were so into badminton, but you learn something new every day. So I'm looking at these and I'm kind of thinking, okay, have I reached critical mass on any of them? Do I have enough information to create an article on any of them? And I'm going to say right now I don't. But if we wanted to create one, we're going to look at a red link, and if we click on it, now this is my new editing account, and I only recently surpassed 10 edits on it, and it's already allowing me to create the mainspace page for Olive Winson. Again, I was struggling to recommend if you're creating an article from scratch, create it in your draft space or in your sandbox first, which is what we're going to look at now. Another thing that I'm going to very quickly do is I'm going to go to my preferences. I'm going to show you how to ensure that you always get your tab for the visual editor if you're not comfortable using source editing. So I'm in my preferences, top right hand corner, go to preferences, and I'm going to hit the editing tab. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and you can see here it says editing mode. And at the moment it's saying remember my last editor. So if you had by accident looked at source editing, it's going to prompt you to look at source editing again because it said that's the last one you used. So I'm going to say show me both editor tabs, which means I always have the option to look at both. You can always say give me visual editor if possible, so it'll always default to visual if it's available on the page that you're editing. I'm going to say show me both editor tabs because that's what I'm used to, and I'm going to press save. So that preference is now saved, and I'm going to just refresh my creating Olive Wilson, and you can see now we've gone from having just create source to create source and create. So it means that I have visual editor as a choice. What's really important is this box up the top here, and it's telling you a few things. It's telling you that there is a page where you can read about what's involved with creating your very first article. And again, it does caution it's a pretty high bar. There's also the article wizard, which I used last night, which is quite helpful. And it does also create this handy link for you. So say if you want to create that draft in your own user space, this is a link to automatically generate one. So rather than creating it in your sandbox, I'll show you now what it does. It creates this page, user Becca editing / Olive Wilson. So rather than / sandbox, we have a draft of the title on it. We'll go back for a second now and we'll have a look at the article wizard in a second. But looking at your first article, so it's quite a detailed document, and it does bring you through blow by blow what's involved in creating a brand new article. And as you can see, it is kind of cautioned that it is a high bar to be setting yourself, and it starts to go through all the things that we've been talking about, the high quality references and the fact that they need to be independent of the subject, so not the company's website, not the school's website. They need to be newspapers reporting on the subject rather than coming directly from the subject. They have to be secondary sources, not primary sources, and to deal with issues with perhaps bias coming from your sources. Is it promotional material? Is it factually representative, or is there a slant? And you have to take into account when you report the information from that there could be a bias from the information you're finding. So as I said, it's quite a good article, and it brings you through kind of from the very start, even creating an account. In general, biographies of living people are that bit more difficult than writing about historical people. That's because there's issues around veracity of information around, and also you kind of slip into areas, especially if somebody receives an awful lot of coverage, if they're a politician or something, and kind of into libel and slander and things like that. Also, making sure that you search through Wikipedia to ensure that you're definitely sure that the person or the thing that you're writing about doesn't exist on Wikipedia, that isn't under maybe an article title that you haven't thought of. So really searching Wikipedia to ensure that it definitely doesn't exist on Wikipedia. And what it's going to do is going to prompt you to look at the article wizard. And I found it quite usable. You can see there's also the create page button here, which, again, it's going to create a user space page for you, like the one that I was just showing you for Olive Wilson. Again, prompting you again to make sure that it definitely does not exist. I mean, there are over 6 million articles on English language Wikipedia now, so there is a chance that it's just under something that sometimes if it's a person, it might be under their full Christian name, or it could be under kind of a colloquial or nickname, if that's what they're better known by, or perhaps an artist name or a pseudonym or something like that, if that's what they are best known by. And it does take a little bit of work when you're creating an article. The beauty of creating it in your draft space is that it gives you time. You can gather together all of your references, all of your resources, and make sure that they're reliable, make sure that you're happy with the information that you're getting from them and where that information is coming from. And that will also back you up on the notability. If you have a nice body of references, it's giving you kind of a clear picture of somebody or something, you're getting towards notability. Importantly, kind of things to avoid, and a lot of this is conflict of interest. So on Wikipedia, as an editor, you should always either edit things for which you don't have a conflict of interest, so you have no personal or business or other relationship with the subject, so they're not your friends or family, it isn't your business that you're writing about, it isn't your parents' business, and if you absolutely have to write about somebody with which you have a conflict of interest, it is you declare it on your user page, you state that you have an affiliation, and then that means that you're not. The main thing with conflict of interest is to be clear about it. If it exists, to state it, not to try and hide it in any way. Wikipedia definitely should not be used for advertising. That's one of the main reasons new articles would be deleted, on new startups or new products in development, unless they are proven, unless there is a history behind a company or a thing or a time period, it will get deleted. Obviously, we don't. There's no place for attacks on people or persons. Wikipedia is not a place for personal essays or original research. We've discussed this. So if you're not finding, like me with the badminton players, if you're not finding a nice crop of reliable resources, perhaps hold fire until you try and create that article for the first time. And all of these potholes, if it's not notable, somebody's probably going to flag it for deletion. Okay. And definitely don't create an article that's just one sentence or a link to a website. And there is a whole list of bad articles ideas. It does flag other things around the things that we've been talking about around paraphrasing, that you're not just copying and pasting other people's work and creating a Wikipedia article from it, that we have our good research and you're citing your sources correctly, and that articles and statements around living people are factual and can be verified. You can see it's quite comprehensive, and I find this box in particular quite important. Kind of things to avoid, things to be careful about, and great ways to contribute. And I would say making those minor edits, those corrections, improving the content that already exists on Wikipedia, definitely a much easier way to start getting your edits up and get more comfortable with editing Wikipedia. Disclosing any relationship you could have with a person or content, that kind of thing. So to scroll back up, we're going to take a look at the article wizard. So the article wizard basically prompts you in a few steps as to how to create a new article. So here we go, I'm going to say next. So there's two choices there. You can see it brings you to your sandbox, or there is a generic Wikipedia sandbox that gets purged fairly regularly. So I wouldn't recommend editing in it unless you know for sure you're going to be removing and using the content elsewhere very quickly. I'm just going to say next. Brings you through blow by blow referencing and notability. If you're not familiar with this, do take moments to read it. If some of these words, especially the ones that are in blue, are unclear, take time to read about it. If you're unsure, just time is your best friend with this. So I'm going to say next. So you can see here it's asking you if you're being paid to edit. Again, it'll prompt you to declare about it. If you're writing about yourself, it's going to dissuade you from doing that. I cannot decide whether or not I am important enough to be on Wikipedia. Small hint, I'm definitely not. But I'm going to say I'm not connected to the subject. I'm not connected to any badminton players. And what it's going to do here is going to ask me to create a draft with a specific name. So again, it's a way of getting to this page, but bringing you through that thought process to get you there. So I'm going to say Olive Wilson. I'm going to say create new draft. So you see it's brought me back to the similar page that we were looking at. It's automatically bringing me to the source editor at the moment, and I'm going to, but equally you can look at it in visual editor. When you create a draft as a new editor, it automatically populates it with a few templates. And one of these is the articles for creation template. And amongst those of us who have taught an awful lot of people to edit Wikipedia over the years, articles for creation, especially if we're working with people in a room, is something we tend to navigate people away from. And it's generally because it's quite a long process. It's basically a review process, but quite a cursory review process. So if I'm creating an article for the first time, I've created one, I have one I've created earlier with this account called on a badminton player called Frank Peard. And so if I was to say, if we go back to Olive Wilson for a minute, I'm just going to say was. I don't even have dates on her at the moment. So I'm just going to say publish page. So I'm just going to say creating initial draft. If I can spell initial correctly. I'm going to publish this. So you can see what it's done is, so this is my brand new draft. I've just created it. This page has just been created now. And this is the box that's been, this is the automatic template that's placed on the box. And it's prompting you to submit it to the articles for creation. And you can, if you're curious about the articles for creation, you can obviously go to the page and it'll give you an idea. So it's intended to assist editors. So brand new editors generally, or people with, conflict of interest on, it provides a process through which somebody can look at their article in an unbiased way, or hopefully in an unbiased way, and review it as to whether or not it should be published. The hit rate for publication through articles for creation is quite low. If there are issues, if they think that you have an unstated conflict of interest that you're writing about yourself or a loved one, or about a company that you work for, it'll get bounced back to you saying, we think that you're too close to the subject. Equally, if there aren't any citations, if there's no references, if it's not reading, looking, or behaving like a Wikipedia article, it'll probably get bounced back to you. And these drafts on Wikipedia, if I make no changes, say now to that Olive Wilson draft for 6 months, it'll get deleted. So if and I've seen this happen, that people, they just submit the draft now. So this one line with absolutely no references gets submitted. This will get bounced back to me very quickly. It'll say, I'm not proving notability. I have absolutely no references to back up that Olive Wilson, A, was a person, or B, ever played badminton, let alone at a national level. So it won't get published as it is. This box does have some utility if you don't want to go through the articles for creation process. There is some use to this page, and then it gives you kind of prompts. Again, it's saying not to copy and paste material. You should try and write from a neutral point of view. It's discouraging you from writing about subjects to which you have a relationship. But also it'll give you places where you can get help, so that you can ask. There is an AfC help desk. What's quite good here is that, so say, talking about Olive Wilson, she's Irish. So if I wanted help, this is another way in which the wiki projects can be very helpful. I could add a link, I could go to the Wiki Project Ireland and say, look, I'm creating a draft of this article on Olive Wilson. Could people help me with reviewing it, or perhaps does anybody have any more resources that they could add to it? And that's a good way of drawing in editors that might have similar interest to you, or even are just interested in kind of general content and want to help out a new editor. There's probably other, is there a Wiki Project Badminton? Do we want to find out? If we go back to the Irish Open, so see what wiki projects, there is a Wiki Project Badminton. So go to Wiki Project Badminton and say, I want to create this article on Olive Wilson, could somebody help me? I'm a new editor and I need help to make sure that it's a good draft. How to improve? Again, it's giving you all these links to how to reference, how articles should be developed, which is a page that we looked at. Verifiability, all of the concepts that we've been trying to kind of unfurl a little bit here. Improving your odds of a speedy review. So linking actually to those wiki projects now. So as a draft page, it does have a talk page. So I could add the 2 wiki projects to it now, which I could do. I'm actually going to do it to Frank Peard. So this is the article I've created on Frank. He was an Irish badminton player who's almost a centenarian, almost reached 100. He died late last year. And what I can do is I can actually add those wiki projects now. And I'm going to, as we mentioned, talk pages are always in Wikisource. So this is the Wikisource code for both of these projects. I'm going to copy those. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to add them. I could also add wiki project biography. I'm going to leave that for a second, but it's still relevant to both of these wiki projects. I'm going to just say adding. So this is already going to start showing up in those categories that we were looking at as to how content relating to wiki projects turns up. And you're also kind of making the case for this is content that's relevant to projects that exist on Wikipedia. So I've done this. Editor resources. So it also prompts you to maybe where you should be looking for references. So through Google, through clever Google searches, through tailored Google searches, but also through some online resources that allow, and especially now, we have a little bit more access to online journal. They've loosened the rules a little bit for a lot of editors outside of institutions and things like that. In particular, JSTOR is now allowing you to look at 100 articles in a month for free. See if Frank Peard is mentioned or Olive Wilson is mentioned in anything on JSTOR. Which in the case of Frank Peard is possible because he was kind of involved in some kind of historical work. But this template, even if you don't plan on submitting your article to Articles for Creation, this template does help a little bit and it helps you navigate creating your new article. So I have my draft here. If I did want to put it through for Articles for Creation, I submit my draft. Okay, and this template has created some of the categories down here that it was a draft AfC submission, that the date that it was submitted, the time stamped. I'm quite happy with this article as it is for the amount that he was involved in the Irish Open and the other work that he did. He was involved in the Ivy Trust here in Ireland. I was surprised that there wasn't more actually written about him. He didn't have an obituary in the Irish Times or anything like that. But he did have Badminton Ireland, obviously had quite an extensive obituary about him. He's also mentioned in a book that I got out about badminton in general, about the history of it. The Ivy Trust wrote about him, and he's mentioned in a book about the Irish Times because he wrote for the Irish Times in the 1950s when he lived in the United States. So I don't want to put it through Articles for Creation. I have 2 choices then. As I mentioned, well, I have a few choices. As I mentioned, you can go to wiki projects and ask for help there. At different times on Wikipedia, brand new editors have been given different levels of ability when it comes to publishing new articles. As mentioned before, my main username, Smirkybeck, I've been creating articles with that for over 9 years. So a lot of the time I haven't been, I suppose, the coalface of knowing if you create a user space today, a user today, how long does it take for you to be able to publish an article onto Wikipedia? There was some trials done in the last few years, putting blocks on people creating brand new articles until their account was 6 months old, or until they had 500 edits. This account only has less than 20 edits at the moment, but I appear to be able to move an article into mainspace, which I wasn't expecting, to be honest. I was quite surprised. And if you're looking back on this, and that's why tutorials on creating pages for Wikipedia do tend to age over time, because it's not always static as to what the policies are at any given time. So you could be watching this in the future and it has changed again. So I would definitely recommend going to those wiki projects. There's also the Tea House, the Wikipedia Tea House, where you can again ask for people to review your page, ask people to look at it, and then if somebody is happy, to then move it into mainspace for you, which I have done quite habitually for new editors over the years. If they've started a draft and I've tweaked it to make it look and feel like a Wikipedia article and helped them by moving it then into mainspace. All of their edit history is still maintained on the draft. It doesn't all get attributed to somebody who's moved it for you. All of your edits within the history are maintained. You don't copy and paste it across. You actually move the page. So I'm going to remove the template for articles for creation. I'm going to remove that. So it's that little bit of a template up the top. And if we just show preview on that, you can see it's removed that big grey box for me. I don't know why it's... Yes, that should be fine. So I'm just going to say, if we were... I'm going to cancel that for a second. To do that in visual, so I'm just going to... I always default to source, and I apologize for that. I'm going to... You can just backspace it away. Oh, nope, going to remove my info box. And you can see now, so if I say removed AfC template. Yeah, see, it's removed the categories as well. Now, this is when I decide whether or not to show you how you actually go about moving a page. And we're in the last few minutes, so I'm actually going to leave that for today. You can see it's still in my draft. It's referred to as Frank Peard. Will we move it? Will we be really bold? And it's always said, if Wikipedia had any rules, which it doesn't, there's plenty of guidelines and manuals of style and all sorts of documentation, but all of that is up for debate at any given time. But if there's any rule on Wikipedia, it's to be bold. And looking at Frank Peard and talking about the wiki links we were referring to earlier, if we go down through the Irish Open, the case for Frank having an article starts to appear. You can see he starts turning up as a red link in the 1950s. That's when he starts winning. He becomes a championship winner. Equally, if we go to the page, I think on the Scottish Open and the English Open, he's equally mentioned in these tables as well for the 1950s. That's what he played. So you have an account. You've had it for a while. You're confident. Somebody has taken a look at the article for you. You've had some help with reviewing. You've talked to some people on wiki projects, and you think it's ready to move it. So we have our move button here. Let's see if it works. So I am moving it. At the moment, it's living in draft, and I want to move it to article. Okay, and the title is still fine. There's no other article called Frank Peard. If there already was a Frank Peard, you might put in badminton player. So what it referred to as a disambiguator, if there's already a Frank Peard on Wiki but there isn't. And I'm just going to say the reason is I'm publishing the page. And I'm moving the associated top page that has my wiki projects on it. And I'm going to watch the source page on the target page in my watch list. So I'm going to say move page. Let's see if it works for me. And there you go. So if we navigate to Frank Peard, he's now in mainspace. The draft has gone away. He's now in the mainspace of Wikipedia. I'm going to stay with you for a few more minutes and show you a few more things that are going to ensure that this article persists. We're going to add a few categories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at, let's look at another, so Gordon Curly Mack, he was another really important Irish badminton player. So I'm going to see what categories he has, and I'm going to add some of those to Frank Peard's. So we're going to add a few categories. Irish badminton players, yeah, he's male. He was born in 1919. Died in 2019. Nope. What else does? He's not a stub, he's a start. So I don't need to put the stub in, so I'm going to save those. Again, it's saying what we're adding to the page in source. I'm happy with that. If we go back to the Irish Open article, and if we search quickly for peered, you can see now he's gone from red to blue. And he's already integrated. He's been flagged in loads of different articles as a red link, so he's already going to be fairly well integrated into Wikipedia. I also know that he has an article on German Wikipedia, which for some reason this is showing me the translation. So if we look back at it in German, sorry for mumbling. So he has an article in German. This also means, so linking together Wikipedia articles from different languages is done through Wikidata. So I know he's probably got a Wikidata item. So Wikidata Datenobjekt, German for Wikidata object. And this is a central location for information on whatever the article is about. So here it's about a person, it's a biographical one, so it's Frank Peard. And it gives you, what he is. He's a human, he's male, he's from Ireland. You can see we have birth and death dates. His spouse, she already has a Wikipedia article on English and German. And you can see these are all of the championships that he won, both single and double. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a language addition. Now there are bots that sometimes do this automatically, and because his name is quite unusual, there isn't going to be another Frank Peard bot called, not PyBot, it's a different one, is probably going to figure out that this is the Frank Peard to sew together with this existing Wikidata item. But you can see here, so this is the language code. So this is the links on Wikipedia. And you can see DE is the German edition. So I'm going to add EN, which is English. And I'm going to write in Frank Peard. That's showing up. And I'm going to say publish. So now we have both language editions of this article, and they're linked, which means if I go back to my new article and I press refresh, he now has a Wikidata item. And we also have a link to the German article. If we take a look at, oh no, I've closed it. But it means that you can navigate to the German article on Frank. So you get those language interwiki links as well. And an article existing on another language Wikipedia is a little bit of a case for an article existing sometimes on another language Wikipedia. The fact that he's an Irish player probably means that he should exist on English and the Irish Wikipedia as well. So there we go. We've been bold. We've created a brand new article. You can see I've gotten a little notice saying that somebody has linked. Oh, it's actually Wikidata thanking me for my first edit, which is nice. So a bit like with Wikimedia Commons, you have your global login onto Wikidata as well. Sometimes, quite often, you get a little alert here saying that somebody has linked your page to the Wikidata item, which is what I was expecting. But there we go. We've been bold. We've created an article. We've had a little look at Wikidata. Probably the sum total of the amounts of edits that I do on Wikidata. How to definitely create your draft in your user space like I did last night, and give yourself the time and the space to create a brand new draft. I'm going to double check. No, I have nobody asking me questions today. It's probably enough for one evening. It's probably heady enough for one evening. I hope that if you are thinking about creating a new article that you're going to, I suppose, take into account the work that's involved in that. I'm not going to say that it's obviously most people are well able to do it, but it does take a little bit of learning, and to give yourself the time and space for that learning curve. Okay, you're probably not going to be able to do it overnight, and don't beat yourself up about it if you can't. And definitely give yourself the time and the space to learn how to edit Wikipedia, so to make sure that when you do create that that first draft, you're giving yourself your best chance possible to create that new article first time out the gate, because you're a confident, well-rounded editor. You've got your bank of edits to support you in that. So I'll be back tomorrow. I haven't decided what I'm going to cover tomorrow, so if anybody has any suggestions or any queries that they specifically want to ask about, please do tweet at me, Wikimedia IE or Restless Curator, and I'd love to hear from you. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.